To be honest, I'm going to get plenty of criticism over my lifetime, and it's something that I don't completely ignore.
The morning air around Kensington Palace felt heavy with tension when a mysterious flash drive appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't delivered through official channels. No courier, no signature, just a plain cream envelope resting neatly on Prince William's private desk. No return address, no fingerprints, no clue about who had dropped it off. But the timing and precision screamed one thing: this wasn't random. Inside that envelope was something shocking. A series of files so detailed, so methodically planned, that they read like a secret operation manual. Every step was documented with unnerving precision. And the plan? It allegedly pointed straight at Meghan, accusing her of running a quiet strategy for 18 months aimed directly at William's children. Within 3 hours of discovering the drive, William had already reacted, fast and firm. That single move would soon send ripples through the royal circle and twist the entire Sussex story on its head. When William found the envelope, it was 7:53 a.m., earlier than usual, though early mornings were nothing new for him. The envelope looked expensive, the kind used for personal correspondence, with only his name stamped in bold letters across the front. But no one on his team knew how it got there. Security footage from the hall showed absolutely nothing out of place. Whoever did it had serious inside access, slipping it right where William couldn't miss it, a silent warning left in plain sight. With cautious hands, sharpened by years of royal security discipline, he opened it. Inside was a single black flash drive, unmarked, no logos, no labels, and next to it, a handwritten note on the same creamy paper: "You need to know what she's been planning for your children." That was it. No name, no explanation, just one cold, direct message that sent a chill straight down his spine. William didn't waste a single second. His very first call went straight to palace security. That mysterious flash drive was treated like a potential threat, and rightfully so. It had to be scanned for malware, spyware, or anything that could sneak into palace systems. For 10 tense minutes, the tech team ran every possible check. Finally, the verdict came in: clean. No viruses, no hidden code, nothing that could compromise royal operations. But what was on it turned out to be far more dangerous than any cyber attack. The drive held a perfectly organized set of folders, neatly sorted by dates and titles. The main folder's name jumped out instantly: Media Strategy, George 18+. Inside, dozens of documents were arranged like a playbook, filled with deliberate, methodical plans. One email, dated 7 months earlier, froze William in place. In it, Meghan allegedly wrote to a senior editor at a well-known American outlet: "When George is old enough to have his own voice, he'll need people he can trust to tell his story without palace filters. Building that relationship now, even at a distance, ensures he knows I'm an option when he's ready to speak his truth." William read that message 3 times, each pass making the meaning hit harder. This wasn't some harmless correspondence. It sounded like groundwork for something much bigger. She wasn't just talking about interviews or family image control. She was allegedly laying out a plan to connect directly with his kids. It painted a picture of someone trying to become their future confidant, a media ally waiting in the wings for the moment they might start questioning palace life. Another folder titled Charlotte Outreach 12 to 16 revealed an eerily similar concept: different target, same precision. And then there was a third folder labeled Louis Development Plan, less complete because of his age, but still following the same pattern. Every file, every line pointed to the same unsettling conclusion. This wasn't random chatter. It looked like a long-term, carefully executed strategy aimed straight at William's children, crafted to position Meghan as someone they could trust over time. Someone Meghan allegedly hoped the kids might turn to as they got older, especially if palace tensions ever flared up the way they once had with Harry. But the most chilling folder on that drive, titled Implementation Timeline, left no doubt that this wasn't just theory. Steps were already happening. The documents showed Meghan had been working with a high-profile California PR firm, one known for managing powerful clients and carefully shaping public perception. Expenses listed in the files showed payments for monitoring services, tracking public appearances, and even social media data extraction from accounts connected to the children's schoolmates' parents. That crossed a major line. As William read, his stomach twisted. This wasn't another round of royal drama or a Sussex PR stunt. This was deeper, colder, and disturbingly methodical. According to what he saw, Meghan wasn't just keeping tabs. She was allegedly running what looked like a strategic infiltration plan. The notes outlined information gathering, emotional timing, and media positioning, all aimed at identifying moments when his children might be most open or uncertain. It read less like public relations and more like calculated manipulation, built to insert herself into their lives just when they'd be most vulnerable. William leaned back in his chair, his hands trembling from a mix of anger and disbelief. He'd weathered years of relentless Sussex stories, painting him as rigid, distant, or cold-hearted. He'd stood by silently as the media twisted his image and watched his brother drift further away. But this alleged targeting of his children felt like a betrayal that shattered every boundary of decency. Without hesitating, he grabbed his phone and made 3 quick calls, first to Catherine, then to his private secretary, and finally to Princess Anne, asking her to join them urgently within the hour. While waiting, he went through every file again, jotting notes, marking dates, highlighting what looked like the most incriminating evidence. Each click of the mouse deepened the shock. By 9:45 a.m., Catherine had arrived, visibly anxious, her expression tight with concern. 15 minutes later, Anne entered, calm, sharp, and all business. William didn't waste a word. He laid out the flash drive, the folders, the emails, everything. The air in the room turned electric as they saw what he'd seen. In that moment, William made it clear. He wasn't just reacting as a father. He was responding as a future king ready to defend his family, no matter who stood on the other side. The deeper William, Catherine, and Anne dug into the files, the darker it got. The documents spelled out an elaborate plan that allegedly involved child psychologists, media consultants, and relationship experts who specialized in what the files chillingly called high-value relationship cultivation with restricted access subjects. The phrasing sounded cold and corporate, like something out of a business manual, not a personal scheme targeting real children. It treated William's kids as calculated projects, not as family. The George section was massive, by far the most detailed, clearly labeling him as the primary focus and highest value target. The files laid out possible emotional triggers, public moments, and personal milestones, all matched with tailored responses. If George ever struggled under the weight of royal duty, Meghan's alleged plan involved using intermediaries to step in subtly, positioning herself as someone who understands royal pressures and could offer empathy where his parents cannot. Every word felt like a strategic play to win trust, and if George ever showed interest in things outside palace tradition, say sports, entertainment, or social advocacy, the plan advised Meghan to publicly back him. It was all about timing her support to seem natural, helping her build gratitude and long-term emotional connection. Even potential teenage drama, romantic trouble, or media criticism had pre-scripted strategies ready to deploy, crafted to make her look like the one person who truly understood him. Charlotte's files took a different but equally unsettling route. Her plan zeroed in on emotional dynamics, specifically feelings of being compared to her older brother. The documents proposed Meghan position herself as a mentor figure, someone who could relate to being overshadowed and guide her towards her own spotlight. Planned organic meetings were disguised as charity collaborations or advocacy work for causes Charlotte might grow passionate about, moves meant to look kind and supportive on the surface while slowly tightening emotional influence beneath it. The goal was clearly stated: ensure Charlotte views Meghan as an ally and trusted confidant. Then came Louis's files, shorter but no less alarming. Because of his age, the notes suggested delayed engagement, but warned not to dismiss his potential. One line stood out like a lightning bolt: if access to George or Charlotte is blocked, Louis provides secondary pathway. It was clinical, cold, almost strategic to the point of being chilling.
And just when they thought it couldn't get worse, the final section exposed something that made the room go silent. The flash drive contained signs of what looked like a surveillance network. Notes referenced field contacts and parental sources, allegedly offering regular updates on the Wales children's behavior, moods, and even casual family remarks. Some names hinted at former palace employees and parents from Lambrook School, supposedly feeding information back to California contacts.
William's jaw tightened as he read. This wasn't just planning, it was organized observation, a quiet operation running right under the palace's nose. One name on the screen made everyone freeze: Source 7. Whoever that was had reportedly been paid nearly £40,000 over just 18 months to deliver monthly reports. Even though George, Charlotte, and Louis didn't have their own social media accounts, their lives had allegedly been tracked through their schoolmates' posts, family friends' updates, and private online spaces that weren't supposed to be accessible to outsiders. It looked like a full-blown shadow network using advanced digital tools to pull details hidden far beyond what the palace ever shared publicly. Then came something that made William's pulse spike. Files claiming Meghan had been tracking his and Catherine's parenting decisions. Every detail, school choices, independence milestones, allowances, and even their control over media exposure had been mapped out to spot what were described as pressure points. The intent seemed to be to find weak spots where emotional tension could grow over time, all quietly recorded for possible use later. Even after sifting through pages of strategy, logistics, and surveillance notes, one truth cut through everything like a blade. All of it pointed directly at the children. Every folder, every memo circled back to them as the central focus of the entire operation. It wasn't random observation, it was organized analysis for what the files called potential leverage. One memo was especially disturbing. It claimed that if William and Catherine kept a tight grip on their kids' public exposure as they grew into their teens, that very restraint could be twisted later. The document described it as controlled silence and suggested it could be reframed as suppression, something that might open space for alternative narratives or outside voices offering freedom of expression. Reading that line, Catherine felt her heart drop. It wasn't just planning, it was manipulation disguised as empowerment. But the worst shock came next, a separate folder labeled Psychological Profiles. Each file was written by someone identifying themselves as an expert in child development and family dynamics, yet what they contained went far beyond normal assessments. These weren't simple notes on personality or behavior. They read like targeting dossiers. The profiles listed each child's perceived insecurities, emotional triggers, and so-called vulnerability points, suggesting how those traits could be used to build dependency or steer their trust toward external guidance figures. Catherine's face went pale as she scrolled through the pages. "This doesn't read like help," she whispered. "It reads like strategy." The realization hit the room like a cold gust. This wasn't family concern, it was structured influence planning, calculated to reach into their children's lives before they even had a chance to protect them. Around them, William's office looked like a command center, screens filled with files, names, timestamps, and payment trails. Every click revealed more evidence that an 18-month surveillance effort had been happening right under their noses, and they hadn't seen a thing. The silence was thick as the weight of it settled in. This was no longer about privacy or family disputes. It was about control, influence, and how far someone might go to claim it. In that tense, freezing moment, William realized his response couldn't be emotional. It had to be strategic, ruthless, and absolute. Anything less would mean failing the one duty that mattered most, protecting his family. His mind was racing with fury and focus. But what he didn't yet know was that Catherine had already sensed something off, weeks before that flash drive ever landed on his desk. For nearly 6 weeks, she'd been quietly piecing together small moments that didn't sit right. It all began in late October,
when Charlotte came home from school one afternoon and mentioned something odd. Her classmate's mother had been asking unusually specific questions about the family's Christmas plans, where they'd be staying, how long the trip would last, and who would be there. At first, Catherine brushed it off as harmless curiosity, but the detail was too sharp to ignore. Then, just a few days later, George mentioned his own strange encounter. During a school sports day, another parent had casually asked about William's travel schedule, specifically when he'd be away on royal duties, and whether the family found it hard to cope when he was gone. The words were polite, but the undertone felt calculated. Two random parents, both asking questions that seemed too personal, too coordinated. Alone, they might mean nothing. Together, Catherine's instincts flared like a siren. The third incident pushed her concern into overdrive. Catherine's personal protection officer reported spotting the same unfamiliar man lingering near Adela Cottage 3 separate times over 2 weeks. Each time he had a reason ready, walking a dog, jogging, enjoying the park, but it didn't add up. The repetition was too deliberate, too rehearsed. Catherine ordered a quiet background check, and the results made her heart drop. The man wasn't just anyone. He was a private investigator who advertised discreet information services on his firm's website. That changed everything. At that moment, Catherine's unease transformed into a full-scale alert. She knew she couldn't rely on guesses or gut feelings. She needed proof, but she couldn't go to William yet. Without solid evidence, it would only create chaos and suspicion inside the palace. So she took matters into her own hands, moving with the quiet precision of someone who'd learned that trust had limits. Catherine reached out to a contact she'd built years earlier, a former MI5 officer now running a private security consultancy for elite families who needed discreet investigations. The conversation was brief but sharp. Her request was clear: find out if anyone is actively gathering information about my children, identify who's behind it, and give me evidence strong enough to act. From that moment on, a parallel operation began, one that even William didn't know existed. Catherine's chosen investigator assembled a small covert team, tracking digital chatter, monitoring local surveillance feeds, and mapping potential information leaks near the school and palace grounds. Every strange question, every unfamiliar face, every shadow that lingered too long was noted. Catherine wasn't just following her instincts anymore. She was building a case. She knew something was happening beneath the surface, and when the truth finally collided with the flash drive's revelations, it would prove she'd been right all along. The investigation stretched over 3 intense weeks, and what it uncovered went way beyond anything Catherine had imagined. Using a mix of private security contacts and trusted law enforcement insiders, her hired investigators started connecting dots that shouldn't have existed. Piece by piece, a disturbing pattern took shape. At least 5 different individuals were actively collecting information on the Wales family, all with one shared focus: the children. Surveillance wasn't just speculation anymore. It was real, organized, and ongoing. There were trails of communication, digital records, and unexplained exchanges of money that proved people had been following, watching, and reporting. The evidence made Catherine's blood run cold. Yet, even with all that proof, one key piece remained out of reach: the why. The investigator could trace the activity back to Meghan's alleged circle, linking payments and coordination, but they couldn't penetrate the inner core of what the true goal was. The strategic intent, what it was all meant to lead to, remained just out of sight. Still, what was uncovered was enough to shatter any sense of safety Catherine had left, and she hadn't even told William yet. She needed time to breathe, to make sense of the storm that had just been dropped in her lap. Then came the discovery that nearly made her hands shake, a conversation the investigator shared with her only 2 days before. According to intercepted communications, Meghan's team had allegedly been trying to recruit someone from inside the Wales household. The offer? A massive payment in exchange for regular, detailed updates on family life, what the children were doing, what William and Catherine were planning, and how they managed their day-to-day routines. The thought of someone inside their own circle being approached, possibly tempted, made Catherine feel physically sick. But the shock didn't stop there. Some of the reports sent overseas contained deeply private details that couldn't have come from simple public observation. These files described the children's emotional patterns, sibling interactions, personal struggles, and even minor family moments that had happened in the privacy of their home. Someone had clearly been feeding information far too close to the heart of the household. Then came the twist that hit Catherine hardest. She was being watched too. Though not the primary focus, her own actions were being tracked. Her parenting choices, her daily routines, even private conversations she'd had with other parents at school events or charity gatherings. Notes analyzed her tone, her words, and her reactions as if she were a subject in some kind of behavioral study. By the end of that third week, Catherine sat in silence, gripping the investigators' final report. The evidence was damning, cold, methodical, and invasive beyond belief. What had begun as suspicion had turned into undeniable proof that someone was watching their family's every move, reporting it to people thousands of miles away.
Catherine nodded. "Your father will struggle with this," she said softly but firmly. "He'll want to believe it's all some misunderstanding. I can explain the facts clearly, without emotion or history clouding the message." William hesitated, then gave a small nod of relief. He knew she was right. King Charles would need to hear this stripped of sentiment, direct, factual, undeniable. And if anyone could deliver that truth with compassion and authority in equal measure, it was Catherine. Even Princess Anne agreed quietly, adding, "Let her handle it. You need to focus on the fallout." The decision was set. The palace's response was now in full motion, and for the first time in 18 long months, William wasn't reacting to chaos. He was controlling it. The final phase of the operation had one clear focus: Harry. William knew this part couldn't be handled with emotion or family sentiment. It had to be formal, controlled, and airtight. A legal letter, not a personal one, would be drafted and delivered strictly through official channels to ensure everything was on record. No backdoor conversations, no leaks, and no room for spin. The letter would lay everything out in black and white. The evidence uncovered, the details of Meghan's alleged operations, and one unmistakable message: Harry had to choose. There would be no emotional pleas, no brotherly appeals, just facts. By 1:45 p.m., the palace's war room had finished crafting a strategy that was both ruthless and precise, ready to launch within hours. The plan synchronized across time zones. Legal filings in California would be submitted before their courts closed for the day, while security actions in the UK would start immediately. Every move was timed to create maximum impact and minimum reaction time. The first official notification, addressed directly to Meghan and her legal team, was scheduled to hit at 5 p.m. London time, which landed right in the middle of California's morning. That timing was no coincidence. It would catch her off guard, leaving her little chance to rally a defense or control the narrative. By 3:30 that afternoon, the legal machine was in motion. William's team finalized a set of filings that were about to change everything: the Sussex situation, the media dynamic, and possibly even royal relations for years to come. And according to insiders in the room, Meghan never saw it coming. The attack was multi-pronged, a carefully coordinated legal strike designed to hit from several directions at once. It wasn't just about defense, it was about shutting everything down fast, while setting a permanent precedent that no one would dare cross that line again. The first filing hit the California Superior Court at 8:40 a.m. Pacific time. The document itself was explosive: a civil complaint accusing Meghan and her associated entities of invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. But what made this move especially devastating was its public nature. In California, civil complaints automatically enter the public record. Within hours, anyone, from reporters to curious citizens, could access it online with a single court search. And that was exactly what William's team intended. The filing was drafted to be airtight legally, but also devastating reputationally. Every sentence was crafted to withstand scrutiny, factual, provable, and strategic. His lawyers knew that once the document went public, it wouldn't just make headlines, it would dominate global news cycles. Then came the second filing, this one in the UK High Court, submitted at 3:45 p.m. London time. It sought an immediate and sweeping injunction preventing Meghan, her agents, or anyone acting on her behalf from collecting any information about William's children in any form, directly, indirectly, digitally, or through intermediaries. The injunction also barred the use or distribution of any previously gathered material, shutting down all potential media exploitation or leaks before they could begin. Both filings were reinforced with a mountain of supporting evidence drawn straight from the flash drive. Every file, email, and transaction had been authenticated by forensic digital analysts, confirming their origin, integrity, and chain of custody beyond question. That verification made the evidence legally bulletproof and ensured no one could claim tampering or fabrication. By the time the court seals went down, both sides of the Atlantic were buzzing. Legal teams, security agencies, and the media were about to collide in a storm William himself had set in motion, a royal counterstrike unlike anything the palace had ever seen. The third legal strike came fast, and it was the most aggressive move yet. William's lawyers weren't just targeting individuals this time. They were going straight for the infrastructure behind Meghan's alleged operation. Early that morning in California, William's legal team filed a formal complaint with the California State Bar, accusing the attorneys who had been advising Meghan's network of professional misconduct and ethical violations. It was a direct hit, meant to rattle the very people who had made the whole operation possible. At the same time, 17 cease and desist letters were fired off to every person and company named in the flash drive files. They were delivered by courier and email, fast, traceable, and impossible to ignore. Each letter demanded immediate termination of all monitoring activities, complete destruction of any gathered data, and written confirmation of compliance within 72 hours. And every letter carried the same warning in bold legal language. Failure to comply would trigger individual lawsuits, no exceptions, no leniency. Among those hit hardest was the California PR firm that had allegedly overseen much of the behind-the-scenes coordination. Already listed in the civil complaint, they received a separate 30-page cease and desist notice loaded with evidence, transaction records, communication logs, and documented timelines of activity. The details were brutal, precise, and legally airtight. Their response came quickly, and it said everything. Within just 2 hours, their attorney reached out, requesting an emergency call with William's legal team. On that call, the firm scrambled to distance itself from the operation. They insisted they had only provided general PR consulting and had no awareness of any monitoring or information gathering related to William's children. But William's team was prepared for that exact line. Calm and controlled, they offered a structured deal. If the firm terminated its contract immediately, handed over every document, email, and file, and returned all advance payments, then full cooperation would be noted formally in court. The PR firm didn't hesitate. They accepted. And with that agreement came something invaluable to William's side, an insider witness with insider documentation. The very network that had once fueled the operation was now helping to dismantle it. As the London evening settled in and the California morning began to unfold, the results were already visible. Filings were processed, letters were received, phones were ringing in every corner of Montecito, and somewhere inside that quiet luxury neighborhood, panic was beginning to spread. Meghan, once in control of her narrative, was about to discover just how quickly the British monarchy could strike back when threatened. At 11:20 a.m. California time, the situation took its most personal turn yet. A process server arrived at the Montecito property carrying what appeared to be routine paperwork. Instead, it was the formal legal letter from William, delivered through strict legal channels and written in the cold, precise language of law. When Harry opened the envelope, expecting something minor, he froze. The document laid out the findings in brutal, unflinching detail.
Page after page described 18 months of alleged surveillance, structured planning files, and data showing intent to target George, Charlotte, and Louis, his niece and nephews. The letter outlined the infrastructure built to monitor and exploit them, and listed the legal actions already launched across 2 continents in the past few hours. According to someone close to him, Harry's first reaction was disbelief. He reportedly said it had to be a misunderstanding, that Meghan couldn't have been involved in something so extreme. But as he kept reading, disbelief turned to a slow, devastating realization. Attached exhibits, emails, plans, payment confirmations, all tied back to communications from Meghan's own media strategy files. For the first time, Harry saw the full scope. Not gossip, not rumor, but evidence. And standing in his California home, surrounded by silence, he realized this wasn't just a royal family conflict anymore. It was a full-blown legal war. Recognition hit Harry like a punch to the chest. The more he read, the more he realized this wasn't just a palace overreaction. It was evidence, line after line of it. He'd watched Meghan build media alliances before, charm editors and manage narratives with precision, but never, not once, had he imagined that same strategy could be turned toward his own family, his nieces and nephews.
Every scrap of information that hinted at family dynamics or exposed even the smallest emotional vulnerability point had been logged and categorized like data in a case file. Catherine could hardly believe how invasive it had all become. And now, as she stood beside William, watching the fury and disbelief flash across his face, the guilt hit her hard. Keeping her secret investigation from him had weighed on her every single day. Their marriage had always been built on trust and absolute partnership, but this time, she'd acted alone. She told herself it was for his protection, that he didn't need the stress or distraction until she had concrete proof, not just uneasy instincts. But watching him now, jaw clenched, eyes dark with betrayal, she couldn't escape the truth. She should have told him sooner. When William finally turned to her and asked quietly, "Did you know?" the room seemed to stop. Catherine took a deep breath and told him everything. Every strange question from the parents, every report from her investigator, every detail she'd pieced together over those long, sleepless weeks. William listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he exhaled sharply, a mix of anger, respect, and resignation. He was furious she'd kept it from him, but he also understood why. She hadn't acted out of doubt, she'd acted out of protection. Still, her revelation made one thing absolutely clear. There was no time left to hesitate. By 10:30 a.m., William had assembled what he privately called his 3-hour war room. Inside a secure conference room deep within Kensington Palace, one routinely swept for surveillance devices, key figures were already taking their seats. At the head of the long table sat William, eyes focused and steady. Catherine sat beside him, her presence quiet but commanding. Around them were his private secretary, the head of palace security, the senior legal counsel for the Wales family, and 2 officials from the royal household's intelligence liaison office, which maintained contact with MI5 and related intelligence services. The room buzzed with tension as the flash drive's most incriminating documents filled the screens. Emails, payment records, psychological profiles, all projected in sharp clarity under the sterile light. William's tone was cold and deliberate as he began. Meghan Markle has been running an 18-month intelligence operation targeting my children, he said, his voice low but unyielding. This is not family drama. This is not media spin. In the next 3 hours, your job is to help me shut this down completely and make sure it can never start again. No one spoke for several seconds. The weight of his words pressed against the walls like a storm about to break. Finally, the head of security stepped forward, reviewing each layer of evidence with calm professionalism, breaking down timelines, data trails, and access points. Then the legal counsel leaned in, her tone sharp and controlled as she asked the question that everyone had been avoiding, but that could no longer stay unspoken. The first question came fast and sharp. What are our legal grounds for action? The head of legal looked straight at William, her tone firm but cautious. Gathering information on public figures, especially across borders, lived in a gray zone, and U.S. jurisdiction made it even murkier. But William didn't hesitate. He was ready. He pointed directly to the most damning evidence on the screen. Attempted recruitment of household staff, he said, flatly. That's potential bribery and corruption. Then he gestured toward the payment records. Money exchanged for information obtained through deceit. That's fraud. His voice hardened. Unauthorized surveillance near royal residences. That's a security breach. Finally, his eyes locked on the documents outlining future contact with his children. And this, strategically planning to reach my children at certain ages, that's interference with parental rights. Every word landed like a hammer. I want every legal angle identified and used, William demanded. His tone left no room for debate. Before anyone could respond, Princess Anne cut in with her trademark precision. The legalities are important, she said sharply. But let's not miss the real point here. Is this about defense, or are we ending the Sussex threat altogether? Her question sliced through the tension like glass. The room fell silent. William leaned back, hands clasped, eyes steady. Then, with deliberate calm, he answered, "Our immediate priority is stopping surveillance and protecting the children. But the larger message must be clear. If you target my family, there will be consequences, serious ones. Consequences that make it unthinkable to ever try again." His words carried quiet fury, the kind that didn't need to be raised to be felt. And Harry, he added after a pause, will have to decide exactly where his loyalty lies. Across the table, Catherine spoke next, her tone firm but measured, cutting straight to what mattered most. "What about the children?" she asked. "They need to understand something important is happening, but they can't feel unsafe or frightened. We have to protect their sense of normalcy." Her voice carried the calm authority of a mother, balancing instinct with strategy. Her point shifted the energy instantly. The private secretary nodded, sliding into procedural mode. "We'll need clear internal coordination," he said, outlining next steps. "But before any action can proceed, His Majesty must be informed. This involves both constitutional and administrative oversight," he continued. "The Prime Minister will also need to be notified, especially if law enforcement or intelligence cooperation becomes necessary. No delays, we can't afford them." The room buzzed again with focused urgency. On the walls, evidence glowed from the screens. Emails, payment logs, profiles. William's jaw tightened as he took it all in. This was no longer a family feud. It was an operation, and it was now officially in motion. There was a bigger picture hanging over everything. The question of how this scandal would ripple through the already fragile Sussex situation. Conversations about Harry's royal standing and even faint whispers of possible reconciliation now hung in the air like a test of loyalty. But William didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat. His voice cut through the room, sharp and final. "My father will be informed this afternoon. The Prime Minister this evening." Then he added with an edge that silenced everyone, "As for reconciliating with Harry, that door just closed permanently." There was no hesitation, no soft tone, no chance for second thoughts. His message was crystal clear. No relationship could exist with someone married to a woman who had allegedly treated his children like intelligence targets. There would be no excuses, no negotiations, no second chances. From that moment, the palace moved like a war machine. The next 2 hours were an organized storm, swift, strategic, and relentless. The legal team went first, building a multi-layered offensive designed to shut everything down before anyone could react. Drafts flew across the table, cease and desist letters to Meghan and her California PR firm, demanding the immediate end of all monitoring or information-gathering activity, along with restraining orders to block any direct or indirect contact with William's children through any channel, public or private. Then came the civil filing, a formal complaint citing invasion of privacy, attempted corruption of palace staff, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The tone was uncompromising. The message was unmistakable. You went too far, and now the consequences begin. Simultaneously, the security division launched a full counterintelligence operation. Every individual listed in the flash drive as a source was to be tracked down, questioned, and documented.
Anyone still on the royal payroll was to be terminated immediately. No leniency, no debate. Those outside the household would face direct police interviews, handled jointly by palace security and law enforcement. Meanwhile, the Intelligence Liaison Office reached out to MI5 to determine if the situation touched national security boundaries. If any classified communications, protected zones, or surveillance networks had been compromised, this would escalate beyond the palace. It would become a matter of state protection. While those gears turned, Catherine took charge of the family front. Her calm, collected energy balanced the tension in the room. She volunteered to handle the most delicate part, speaking with the children. Sitting down with George, Charlotte, and Louis separately, she explained in soft, age-appropriate words that there were people outside the family trying to learn too much about their lives. They weren't in danger, she told them, but they had to be alert. If any adult ever asked strange questions or made them uncomfortable, they were to tell her or their father immediately. Her instinct was pure protection. Keep their world steady, no fear, no panic, just awareness. Then she turned back to William with quiet determination and said, "I'll inform your father myself." William looked up, exhaustion flickering across his face. "Are you sure?" he asked.
The letter gave him 72 hours to respond. No wiggle room, no gray areas. It laid out 3 stark options, each more impossible than the last. Option 1. Publicly acknowledge that Meghan's actions were unacceptable. State clearly that he had no knowledge of her conduct and agreed to fully cooperate with William's legal team. That meant testifying, submitting communications, even allowing legal discovery on private records. It was the clean option, but it also meant choosing the monarchy over his wife. Option 2. Provide evidence that he had known about parts of the plan but had tried to stop it. That route effectively turned him into a witness against Meghan, a move almost no one believed he could make. It would shatter any chance of repairing their marriage and risk igniting an international scandal that could follow them forever. Option 3. Defend Meghan or stay silent. Either move would be treated the same. It would trigger permanent separation from the royal family, the loss of remaining royal privileges, and potentially open the door to criminal investigations if new evidence suggested his involvement. There was no comfort in the letter's tone. William wasn't asking, he was declaring. The document was written like a legal ultimatum, not a plea for family reconciliation. Every sentence carried the precision of someone who'd spent hours ensuring there were no loopholes, no way to spin the narrative, no path for sympathy to cloud the consequences. It was clear from the very first paragraph. William didn't want conversation, mediation, or brotherly understanding. He wanted clarity, accountability, and finality. Your response, the letter stated plainly, will be formally recorded and preserved for legal proceedings. It will determine permanently the nature of your relationship with this family. There was no walking it back, no softened phrasing, no emotional appeal, just deadlines, evidence, and choices. Once Harry answered, whatever came next would be irreversible. Option 1, acknowledging Meghan's alleged misconduct, was, in truth, almost unthinkable. To admit she had crossed a line would be to admit their entire foundation had cracks in it. It would mean divorce, or at the very least, a public rupture so deep that it could never be repaired. There was no middle path, no way to appear supportive while condemning her actions. Harry stared at the final paragraph, the words sharp enough to sting. This matter allows for no neutrality. Failure to act constitutes a choice. In that moment, the weight of everything, his past, his duty, his loyalty, and his future crashed down on him. Choosing Meghan meant cutting off his family forever. Choosing his brother meant betraying his wife in the most public, devastating way imaginable. No option was survivable. No answer would leave him whole. And somewhere in the distance, Harry could already feel the storm gathering, the one that would decide not just his marriage, but his place in royal history itself. Option 3 was the harshest of all. Refuse to condemn Meghan or stay silent, and the result would be total, permanent exile from his British family. No appeals, no last-minute rescues, no soft reconciliation behind closed doors. Every royal bridge would be burned.
forever. His children would grow up oceans apart from their cousins, their grandfather, their uncle, and their aunt. The family bonds that had once been unbreakable would become nothing more than distant memories. For Harry, that meant full estrangement, not just emotional, but official, locked into legal documentation that marked him as the man who chose to stand beside someone accused of targeting royal children for manipulation and influence. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was written, time-stamped, and filed. Option 2 technically still existed, but it was nearly impossible. Becoming a witness meant admitting he'd known something, anything, about Meghan's alleged actions, and that was a line few believed he could cross. Even if he did have documentation or texts suggesting he'd tried to stop her, that admission would tear his marriage apart and still offer no guarantee that William or the palace would ever welcome him back. William's letter didn't promise forgiveness. It promised clarity and consequences. Cooperation wasn't rewarded. Refusal was punished. The 72-hour deadline wasn't random. It was calculated. Every minute of that window had been strategically engineered to force a decision. There was no time to build a counter-strategy, no space to rally legal defenses or PR spin. Harry couldn't negotiate terms, delay responses, or seek sympathy through media leaks. It was a direct hit, forcing him to face the truth without scripts, without counsel, without Meghan's team controlling the narrative. The pressure was brutal by design. William wanted a real decision, not a performance. No clever maneuvering, no damage control, no shaping perception for public favor, just an unfiltered choice: family or marriage. The ultimatum left no gray space, no pause button, and absolutely no room for error. When Harry finally showed Meghan the letter, the explosion came fast. Her reaction was fiery, defensive, and theatrical, a mix of shock and outrage. She claimed the flash drive was stolen property, insisting it had been planted to frame her. She said the documents were manipulated, claiming someone had twisted her correspondence to create false accusations. Her tone swung between fury and fear. At one moment attacking William's motives, the next accusing the palace of orchestrating the entire situation as revenge. "This is a vendetta," she allegedly snapped, calling it the work of a man who never accepted me as part of his family. But behind the fire and denial, there was something else: fear. Not just fear of what William had done, but fear of what William still could do. For the first time, Meghan seemed to grasp that this wasn't a PR battle she could charm her way through. The monarchy had gone legal, and in that world, public opinion didn't protect you. Evidence did. She tried to spin it fast, telling Harry that any so-called information gathering had only been defensive. It was, she said, about protecting themselves from the palace's own monitoring and media manipulation, actions she claimed had been happening behind their backs for years, allegedly coordinated by William's camp. Her voice trembled between confidence and panic as she framed herself as the victim, the one forced to act because they were always watching us. But Harry, holding that letter in his hands, couldn't shake the sense that this time there was more truth on the other side than he wanted to admit. For the first time, the battle lines weren't drawn in the press. They were drawn in court filings, deadlines, and legal consequences that could end everything they'd built together. Meghan's defense crumbled under the one thing she couldn't twist: her own words. The flash drive contained messages and notes she had written herself, detailing every stage of her strategy, her phrasing, her tone, her intent. They were all unmistakable. These weren't defensive measures or protective steps. They were offensive moves, describing how and when to approach William's children and how to shape their trust in the years ahead. There was no spinning that. For Harry, the reality hit hard. This was no longer just about family politics or media noise. It was about who he had married. He had to face the unthinkable possibility that the woman he loved had viewed children, his own nieces and nephews, as pieces in a long-term personal and commercial plan. The truth tore through him. If the evidence was real, then Meghan's actions had crossed every moral and familial line imaginable. He now faced a choice heavier than any legal risk: stay loyal to his marriage and lose his family forever, or confront Meghan and possibly end his marriage in the most public, devastating way possible. Either path carried consequences that would follow him for life. By the morning of December 6th, just 48 hours into the 72-hour deadline, Harry finally made a move. Sources close to the situation revealed that he had contacted his own lawyer, separate from the legal team he shared with Meghan. That one quiet decision spoke volumes. It signaled he might be considering option 1, cooperation with William's legal framework.
Still, no one knew if he would follow through. Would he submit a written response that met William's exact requirements, or would hesitation trap him in silence? What was clear was that Harry's position had become completely unsustainable. He could no longer live between two worlds. He couldn't cling to the Windsor name while staying married to someone who, intentionally or not, had declared a private war against its next generation. William's ultimatum had left no escape routes. When the clock hit the 72-hour mark, Harry would either respond and accept the cost, or through silence, accept exile. His future, his identity, and every royal tie he'd ever known hung in the balance. For those who remembered the closeness between the brothers, the laughter, the shared duty, the bond that once seemed unbreakable, the sight of this fallout was heartbreaking. What had begun as differences in path had now collapsed into legal ultimatums, documented betrayals, and irreversible choices. There was no clean ending left, only fractures that couldn't be mended. And yet, beneath all the shock and strategy, the real tragedy was painfully simple. Harry could still choose one of two things: family or Meghan. But what he could no longer choose was the illusion that he could have both, that time would smooth it over, that love could outrun the damage, that royal blood could outweigh ambition. That illusion shattered the moment William opened that anonymous envelope and saw with his own eyes what had been planned for his children. Every action since that morning had been a reaction to that discovery, the moment that turned family tension into open war. If this breakdown left you stunned, share it with others who follow the royal drama. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts below, because this story isn't over yet, and what comes next might just change everything.